bringing you the latest in health and wellness so you can get to the other things that matter. Here is your host, Karl Sterling. And we're back. Welcome back, folks. Well, it's really good to be in the studio again.
It's fun. I missed it.
Me too. I mean, we haven't been here in probably a month. I recorded a lot of shows and we aired them. Appreciate all the good feedback. We've been very fortunate to have some really wonderful guests to help educate us. And I also just want to say thanks for putting up with my rant in the last hour, but I care, so that's why I rant sometimes. Well, we have a very special guest with us right now. With us today is a Central New York native too, right? And she's a best-selling author of several books. The latest book, I believe, is called Dark Calories, which I love. And so I would like to introduce the one and only Dr. Cate Shanahan. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Cate. How you doing?
Hi, Karl. It's so great to be back on your show. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you here. So if I remember correctly, let's just talk a little hometown stuff first. You went to JD, is that correct?
JD High School. Yep. We lived in DeWitt, and I was on the cross country team, and our arch enemy on the cross country team was Baldwinsville High School at that time.
That's where I live. The Bees, Baldwinsville Bees. Yep. And you have family still here, right? Your dad is working?
My dad works at the VA, yes. In Syracuse and other VAs around the area. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
And my mom is, they're both, still there, cranking away in their house.
That's great. Well, it's great to have you with us. You've done so many great things, and you're a pioneer in many areas, but the area I want to go down this road again today, because the interest level in this is so high from our listener base. And selfishly, my interest in this is this whole seed oil arena, where I know you taught a lot of the experts out there a long time ago. You were the leader in the pathway of really discovering and educating about the dangers associated with seed oils, many of them. And I wondered if we could just start off with, let's go with a comment you made that I find to be highly interesting yet disturbing, but hey, the truth is what it is, right?
That's right.
It was something like this: one order of French fries, maybe at McDonald's French fries. Sorry, McDonald's, but truth is the truth. You kick me off the air, it's okay, but whatever. I'm going to bring truth. I'm not going to lie to you about anything. Consuming one of those has about the equal impact negatively on your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes.
That sounds so incredible that it's hard to believe, but that is straight out of the mouth of one of the world's most well-renowned toxicologists, who literally went to a bunch of different fast food restaurants and may or may not officially have included McDonald's and Burger King and others. And he took an order of fries and measured what he studies specifically are called alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes. Those are toxins that are also present in cigarette smoke. It's what we get from inhaling cigarette smoke. And he found that in a single French fry, you will be consuming an identical amount of those toxic aldehydes as you would get from inhaling an entire tobacco cigarette. They both contain similar chemicals. They're not exactly the same. Some of them are exactly the same, but the family is the same, and they have the same terrible effects on our body. They are toxic. And aldehydes, if it sounds familiar to you, it's possibly because of formaldehyde, which is a preservative associated with, dead people preserving cadavers from rotting. It's not something compatible with life. And yet these French fries are loaded with them. And it's not, of course, just French fries. That, I don't want anybody thinking, oh, well, as long as I don't eat French fries, I can have the onion rings, right? I can have the deep fried chicken, right? Those chicken nuggets. No, it's really the deep fryer process. And it's because of what the deep fryers are filled with these days, which are the vegetable seed oils like soy oil and canola oil. And those are deteriorating during the cooking process. And that is not what the American Heart Association wants you to believe. That's not what I learned. Like you said earlier, I've been talking about this for a long time. I've educated other doctors. It was shocking to me when I started realizing that these oils that we were taught in school are heart healthy. Dietitians learn this, nutritionists learn this. That they actually can deteriorate into toxins, and nobody had warned me about this. Nobody had warned anyone about this. The public needs to know, and that's why I've been writing books for so many years.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I remember you were talking. I'm going to go on a side note here. So I worked at Burger King for 4 days when I was 18. And all I'm going to say is it was so disgusting. I walked out one night. I never went back to get my paycheck. I couldn't believe how disgusting it was. So we're talking 1979, maybe 1980. And you were describing to me previously about this process that the longer these oils cook, seems like the worse it gets. We're borderline break here in about a minute and 15 seconds, but can you just talk a little bit about that just for like 1 minute?
Yeah, so it's the heat is an accelerant of the reaction that causes the toxicity. And it's a reaction between oxygen, which is in the air, it's in our bodies, and the oil itself. And when those two things interact, which they do at pretty low temperatures, they'll interact at room temperature, but the heat accelerates it. So the longer it's heated and the higher the temperature, the more toxins you get. That's why fried food is the worst of the worst. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, when we come back from our first break here, I'd like to talk about, really dive into this more so about maybe some of the things that are happening to us if we ingest these things, especially if we do it on a regular basis. I'm also just curious if these are addictive, because I think they can be addictive. So with that in mind, folks, we're going to go to a break. You're listening to Your Health Matters. We're with Dr. Cate Shanahan today, and I have Elizabeth Brusa with me and producer Kyla. Thank you for everything. You make our job so easy. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
You've ruined my life. I'm sorry. That's okay.
Somehow that makes me happy.
And I approve this message.
Paid for by Mannion for New York.
News Radio 570 WSYR on iHeartRadio and 106.9 FM.
My mom would be really thrilled to hear this music coming in because she knows my CD well. So, yeah. Mom in heaven, I love you and I miss you so much. And, well, just going off for a minute. Mom passed away 2 weeks ago, and I used to get text messages right before the show. Well, I don't anymore, but I am okay and I'm strong, so I'm recomposing myself right now. And we are talking with Dr. Cate Shanahan, and we were talking on the break about metabolic health crisis. And I'd like to lead in a little bit by saying, talk with Dr. Thomas Seyfried at Boston College. I don't know if you know him or not, but it's very interesting to hear his research about cancer more so as a metabolic disease than maybe genetic in a lot of cases. And so if let's just say that that's true, okay. We have cancer, metabolic crisis, and things that cause the metabolic crisis. Let's talk about this metabolic health crisis we have right now, Doctor.
The number one threat to our country's stability right now is the metabolic health crisis that we're in the midst of. And metabolic health is is about so much more than just our weight. A lot of people hear the word metabolism and they think about their weight. And if they have a healthy weight, they believe that it means they're healthy, they're good to go. And, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but no, that couldn't be farther from the truth. And I would actually agree 100% with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who I interviewed Dr. Thomas Seyfried for my book, Dark Calories, because I agree with his science. He's been pioneering the idea that our diet in a lot of ways can control whether or not we get cancer. But I've been trying to pioneer a similar related idea, which is our diet in a lot of ways controls how we feel as we age. And it controls so many things. Like, for example, the group of people who are getting dementia, the fastest where dementia is increasing is in people under the age of 65. Dementia has gone up something like nearly 400% in people in the younger age group, and people between like 45 and 65 in the past few years. 400% of all the different kinds of dementias you can get. As all of the diseases that we don't want to get have gone up. Cancer is now the number one cause of death in people under 50. And that was unheard of when I first started practice. So, I started practicing about 30 years ago. And one of the things that taught me the most was about aging and what it's supposed to look like was the fact that I worked for 11 years on the island of Kauai, Hawaii, where people had grown up without vegetable seed oils for the most part, and with a very healthy traditional diet, and they, at age 65, did not have memory problems, almost none of them. They did not have physical disabilities, almost none of them. Very few were even on any medications. If anything, it was just for maybe a little high blood pressure. But they were able to work physical jobs all the way up to retirement. And why does that matter? Because it means they were able to enjoy physicality during their retirement. They could be active, they could garden, they could travel, they could spend time, they could babysit their grandchildren, which was often one of their favorite things to do.
Sure.
Not always, but you know how kids can be. But so that was where I got my window into the past of what true aging is supposed to be like before our food supply was flooded with seed oils. And I just want to point out, when I say flooded with seed oils, do you know that 80% of most people's fat calories now come from seed oils and not from things like butter or any sort of animal fat, the fat in meat or any kind of real food-based fat? 80% is from the collection of 8 oils that I call the Hateful 8, which are important to know about. And so I'm just going to list them out real quick here. That is corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower. Those 6 you need to memorize. And the other 2 are in restaurants: rice bran and grapeseed. So just remember the 3 C's and the 3 S's. And those are everywhere in, all the junk food, but in frozen food and, most of the foods in the grocery store that have a, ingredients list, probably 95% of them. If they have any kind of fat, it's going to be one of those corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower that you're going to see. Even on foods like, supposedly healthy foods like lean cuisine and organic foods, even if you shop at Wegmans, right? Even if you shop at Whole Foods Market or Trader Joe's, you're going to be buying these oils unless you're on your guard. And this is why our health is declining. These are the worst things in the food supply for reasons we already talked about. But doctors do not learn this. So doctors cannot help you when you have inflammatory symptoms, when you have things that we think are part of normal aging, when you develop asthma, when you develop psoriasis. All of these have their root in the fact that we are eating these poisonous, toxic foods made with these oils, and doctors don't learn about it. So one of the biggest things, the reason that I wrote Dark Calories was to educate people that they can shed so many medications and just gain health freedom and health independence by changing just this one thing about their diet and avoiding these oils. And Dark Calories tells you why, and it tells you how to do that. So it's really written to empower people to free themselves from dependence on the healthcare system. And, part of that is I have to shake the foundations of their belief in the healthcare system, because the healthcare system miseducates doctors. And that's maybe what we can talk about in the next segment, because that is so, so important, if that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, please. That is so okay. It's so good. So Dr. Seyfried was, when we were talking last month, the statistics are alarming. For example, 1,600 people a day dying of cancer, about 70 people per hour in this country currently dying of cancer. It's just mind-boggling. And I say this all the time. I'm sorry, folks, but you're going to hear it again. I'm 63 years old. When I was 13 years old, and for those of you who are my age about, or maybe a little older, or even if you're in your 40s, I bet you can go back and 30 years ago, we didn't have the number of cases of type 2 diabetes and the obesity the way it is. But, back in the 70s, for sure, it was a whole lot different. And going back even further, as I believe it was Casey Means was telling us that if you were obese back in the 40s, 30s, 20s, if you were type 2 diabetic, I should clarify, you were a case study.
Absolutely. When I was in first through fourth grade, I went to elementary school, and it was a huge school in the inner city of Philadelphia. And I was one of 11, white kids. That's what we called ourselves back then. We were the white kids, and everybody else was black. That's what they called themselves then. So I'm just going to respect what they called themselves.
Sure.
And not a single one was obese, not even overweight. But these days, African Americans, Black people, 1 in 4 children is overweight. 1 in 4. And why? Well, if you ask some obesity specialists, they'll say it's because of their genetics, which is absolutely absurd and irresponsible, because their genetics haven't changed. And that was 1, 2 generations ago. Their genetics have not changed. And why would it be African American genetics have suddenly changed, but no one else, but other folks haven't, right? All of our genetics suddenly changed. That's why we're overweight. That is an absurd thing to suggest, but that's what a lot of obesity specialists who are, quoted on places like 60 Minutes, respected people.
Yeah.
That's what they are saying. And that's absurd and obscene. And I am fighting against that message.
I'm glad. I'll help you however I can. We can continue with that when we get back. But before we go there, another thought came and left my mind. Let's see, obesity. Genetics. Yeah. Okay. So what's not even genetics. Let's just go into this. We talk about humans. Let's say, let's go to the animal population. Deers, squirrels, I don't know, all kinds of wildlife. They've maintained their weight for years and forever, for eons. Humans did it up until maybe 80, 90 years ago. It started to change a little, but definitely in the 70s, there was a change. And even more so, probably in the 1980s, and of course now everywhere. So we were able to maintain as humans a general sort of weight for millions of years. And here we are the past 40, 50, whatever, and all of a sudden it's different. So clearly that doesn't seem like it's genetic to me. When we come back, we're going to continue talking with Dr. Cate Shanahan, best-selling author of many books, including Dark Calories. You're listening to Your Health Matters here on News Radio 570 WSYR. We'll be back after the bottom of the hour break.
Am I the only one?
Name it. We have world-class talent on that thing, too. Holy cow. So before we get back into our discussion with Dr. Cate Shanahan, folks, I'm getting more and more reservations. So if you wish to attend this coming Saturday, the 9th of November at 10 a.m., 10 to 12, open house at Neuromotor Training in Camillus, text me 315-935-7488, or go to karlsterling.com, Karl with a K. Right there, smack dab in the top center of the landing page, are instructions to text or email. You got to make a reservation. Space is limited. We're going to talk about all things longevity, the things you can do, well, to live longer and live healthier. We're with our special guest today is Dr. Cate Shanahan. Love talking with you, doctor. It's always it's only our second time talking, but I always love talking with you.
Well, thanks, Karl. It's great to be back
really.
with you and Elizabeth.
So let's talk about what doctors maybe know, don't know. We know we have a lot of great healthcare professionals out there, a lot of doctors who they go into the business. I think they really do want to help people. But I think part of the problem is what they don't learn. And I wonder if you can kind of enlighten us on that and like how that may play a role in what's going on with our current crises.
Yeah, so absolutely doctors are going into medicine. Most of us go into it with best of intentions, and we have no clue how those good intentions have been hijacked by big business for profit, for the profit mostly of the drug companies and big food. And what I'm talking about specifically, when I say hijacked, I mean this very important historical, time period. There's an historical event that doctors don't learn about, and that is the American Heart Association took money from Procter & Gamble, who sold vegetable oil, and the American Heart Association, who is today still the leaders in heart health and nutrition thought. And very shortly after they took $1.75 million in 1948 dollars, which translates to about 30 million today. So we're not no small potatoes here. They took that much money from Procter & Gamble, and shortly after that, they started talking about how oils were the kinds of fats we should be eating, and we should give up generations of traditions of living on butter and eggs and enjoying cheese and enjoying a juicy burger and a grilled steak and, chicken cooked with the skin on and roasted and, delicious, the all American, even the hot dog, although that is a form of processed meat, but the fat in it is not the problem. So our education has now been transformed into a vehicle basically for where doctors are miseducating our patients on what a healthy diet looks like. It's often said that doctors don't learn about nutrition, but we learn about fats. We learn the exact same things. The main high points of what we learn is exactly the same with what dietitians learn. And, dietitians are the experts, supposedly. So it's not just doctors whose good intentions have been hijacked. It's dietitians, it's nutritionists, it's anyone who's been educated in the standard allopathic medical system, because they all have to obey what the American Heart Association puts out. And I mean they have to, because they create these things called practice guidelines and standards of practice. And the standards of practice dictate what we are to tell our patients in terms of how to treat whatever it is that they have or how to prevent it. And bottom line is we have to recommend people who care about their heart health to avoid saturated fat, and that will send us directly into the waiting arms of the people selling seed oils. Chips and crackers and junk foods, they are not made with butter and saturated fats. They are made with these seed oils. And so for somebody who's looking to avoid saturated fat, you can still load up on all these chips. And in fact, there are junk foods out there that will say they're heart healthy and approved by the American Heart Association because they don't have saturated fat. So we live in this world where we as consumers, healthcare consumers, have to know more than our own trusted doctors who we may have these great relationships with. Maybe they've helped us through difficult times in our lives. We have to know more than them. We have to shut our ears to whatever advice they might be giving us about diet, because chances are it's just the standard American Heart Association standard guidelines, which are going to send us to an early grave because they promote seed oils and they scare us off of absolutely healthy foods. There's almost nothing healthier than an egg. And yet the American Heart Association discourages us from eating these foods, which, before the American Heart Association, doctors used to recommend eggs. They used to recommend children drink whole milk 3 times a day. That was a good idea because it did indeed build healthy teeth and strong bones. And the children who grew up on the milk 3 times a day are the people who these days have the best bone density, right? Especially if they continue drinking it, throughout their adult life.
Well, with that, I kind of like to just say, in my experience, many, many years now, it happened more so when I was up at the university at SU, doing the same work up there that I do in my clinic now. But what's interesting is the dietitians, people would be, prescription to a dietitian, let's say, and then they bring in these food plans. And I was a nutrition major there, and, I don't want to say anything bad, but it's not a good program. It's not good at all. But the dietitians they give these food plans to these people. They come in and I look at them and I had to laugh. I mean, I wasn't going to laugh in front of them, but it wasn't funny laugh either. This is like, I can't even believe what they're saying these people should eat. This is not going to get them to their goals. This is not rocket science. It just doesn't seem like, but where are they? Well, they have been hijacked as well, the dietitians, nutritionists. So, that kind of makes me segue here before we go for our last break in a minute. To go back to the first hour today where we were talking, folks, about if you have the knowledge and you're receiving the knowledge, well, you don't have to believe it, but you should. Because Dr. Cate Shanahan, Elizabeth, and me, we're not going to lie to you. We're here to educate you. There's a reason why there are various epidemics happening of obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic health crisis. And it's not because we're doing the right things. It's because a lot of wrong things, a lot of wrong advice is happening right now. All right. And it's been happening for decades. So this is where you take your knowledge, your education, and you have to, if you decide you want to live better, you want to reach certain goals with health, longevity, quality of life, put more life in your years, create your non-negotiables. We talked about it for the first hour. It's not negotiable for me to have certain things. I'm just not going to do it. I won't compromise my health like that. You have to be the resistance. You have to just be you have to be that. You have to take control. You're humans. You have free will. And with that, we're going to break. And we're coming back for one more segment with Dr. Cate Shanahan. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
Surprise. The October surprise.
The only garbage I see floating out there is the Porters.
What happens next?
Do you remember that one, Dr. Cate, the Incredible Egg commercial?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah.
What was that? The 80s? Was it the 80s they did that?
I mean, that sounds about right. Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, the early 80s. Because I don't know when it stopped being incredible. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question.
I could ask the A&I. So my mom passed away a couple weeks ago, and it's been a really, really hard time. So I live with beautiful memories, though. And one thing that, and she pushes a box of Kleenex towards me.
2 minutes. We got 2 minutes.
Aw.
It's so much. It's been really, really hard for a lot of reasons. But anyways, what the heck was I just going to say?
No, we were talking about the incredible egg. We got on your topic. We were talking about the commercial.
And eggs.
A&I.
Oh, A&I. So I'm going into ChatGPT because I use it all the time for stuff. And I use every day I use
A&I.
A&I, but my mom called it the A&I.
Oh,
So
that's funny.
A&I think it's going to take over the world. What do you think? In some ways, it could do a lot. That's what a lot of people say. It's just, oh, the A&I.
Isn't that AI? I thought that there was no and in there. I thought it was just AI.
It is a AI.
It's A. My mom called it the A&I.
Oh,
So
that's cute.
we have a lot of inside jokes here, and that's one of them. Let's see. What should we go? What do you want to do for the last? We'll probably have, I'm just guessing, 8 to 9 minutes or so for the last segment. We're going to have 9 minutes, and this is a platform for you, Dr. Cate, maybe directing people towards you, your website, your books, whatever you want, and talk about whatever, but make this about you. So is there anything in particular?
Well, I guess I would just like to maybe close about talking about reversing diabetes, maybe getting off meds, getting people off brain meds.
Perfect. Okay, we're coming back in a second.
News Radio 570 WSYR on iHeartRadio and 106.9 FM.
All right, we're back, and I just looking something up here. The slogan, "The Incredible Edible Egg," was launched by American Egg Board in 1977, with the first television commercial airing that year. Wow, isn't that the Incredible Edible Egg? So on the break, we were talking about that. I remember that commercial. Yeah, the Incredible Edible Egg. Yep. Okay, you heard me sing. That's it. Never again. So, so Dr. Cate, where would Dr. Cate Shanahan, just in case you're just tuning in, folks. And what can we do as a society and just in general? What can we do to, let's say, just reverse diabetes or something like that? What can we do to take control? What are the best things for us to be doing to, combat this bunch of epidemics we have, diabetes and type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome?
Well, one thing we need to do is change who we are listening to about diet, right? Because it has to come from outside the standard allopathic system. And, I've been making a lot of pretty strong claims here about what doctors, and dietitians learn and how bad their advice is. But I want to emphasize now and maybe discuss a little bit. This is real. I am a medical doctor, a family medical doctor, and I have been working with people for over 2 decades and watching their health improve, watching people who have struggled to lose weight and keep it off actually be able to keep it off. Like I had a patient who was it was something like 450 pounds. He was a tall gentleman. He was like 6'5", but he had had a stroke and lost the use of the left half of his body. So exercise was off the table. And over the past 5 years that I've known him, he's gotten his weight down now under 200 pounds without exercising. And, so this is just to say that amazing, incredible things will happen once you empower yourself with the right nutrition knowledge. And I give you that empowerment in my book, Dark Calories. And I also work with people one-on-one to help them get off medications. I have helped so many people get off diabetes medications. Just a quick short story. One, it ties into our earlier discussion about cancer. So about maybe 7 years ago, a patient of mine, his father was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, which is a very aggressive cancer, and the treatments for it are really draconian. You have to remove a whole bunch of vital organs. You can't eat anymore. You have to have a tube, right? You can't even swallow your own saliva. So he didn't want that, and he was willing to change his diet in a way that would help him beat cancer the best, give him the best chance. And so that was going to be a keto diet, because that is the only diet that right now has been proven. But it was definitely getting off seed oils. One of the big things, though, was he had type he had type 1 diabetes, right? He was in his 80s and he was on insulin. So he was an insulin dependent diabetic. But it wasn't what he thought. He had thought all his life, because he was on insulin, he was going to be on insulin forever. Turns out it was really not type 1 diabetes. It was actually just diet-induced type 2 diabetes. No one had ever told him that. So when I told him what to do, we got him off of his insulin in a single weekend just by changing his diet. Because he had been eating a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of processed food and a lot of seed oils. And once we just eliminated that and made his diet fully 100% compliant with, what they were calling the Shanahan plan, or the Dr. Cate diet, he didn't need insulin anymore.
I like that, actually, the Shanahan plan. I love it. I love it. I love it.
So you can take control of your health. Not everybody's going to be able to make changes that fast. He was as motivated as he could possibly be. But this is just to say that type 2 diabetes is probably one of the most common chronic diseases out there that people have to see their doctor for on a regular basis. It drains their bank accounts, the recurring visits, the recurring medications, the recurring tests, not to mention all the things. Diabetes has so many complications. It can make you go blind. It can make you lose your kidney. It can destroy your nerve endings so that you don't have any sensation in your feet, and you might get infections and, need amputations. It can destroy your heart. Diabetes is serious. And type 2 and type 1 can do this. But if you have type 2, guarantee that changing your diet will improve your control of type 2. And maybe even reverse it, maybe even completely, maybe even in just a few weeks or months. So it's definitely worth a try.
It's amazing. Absolutely. There's such power in this if we can, if we know about it and we can execute this plan. And I mean, there's such power. Where can people go to buy your books?
My books are available on Amazon and pretty much everywhere books are sold. I have multiple books. So if you want to figure out which book you want to buy first, you can go to my website, and maybe in the show notes, you can go if you have show notes. But my website is drcate.com, drcate.com. And on the top navigation bar, one of the drop-down menus will say, which book shall I buy first? And it will help you decide, because if you want to lose weight, then the fat burn fix is maybe the main one for you. If you want to understand why everybody's talking about seed oil suddenly and just how powerful it is that you can take control of your health once you eliminate seed oils, then you want to start with dark calories. If you are in the process of thinking about having children, or you want to raise healthy children, you want to improve your fertility, you want to really truly optimize your diet, like with all the what I call bells and whistles of like super maximum healthy diet, more than just avoiding seed oils and processed foods, right? There's things you can do that go way beyond that. That I talk about in Deep Nutrition, which was my first book. And so people are reading those books. And just yesterday, I was working with a gentleman who was on 7 medications. So changing the subject from diabetes to mental health. He was on 7 medications for bipolar disorder to control his anxiety, to help him sleep, to control his racing thoughts. He had been on 7. And over the course of a couple of years, working, closely with a dietitian who was familiar with deep nutrition principles, and there's a lot more of them out there now. He didn't even meet with me until recently. She helped him implement the kind of diet that I recommend, and he's off all of those psychiatric medications now.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And well, I can't remember who I was talking with. Maybe I didn't talk with somebody, but Dr. Chris Palmer advocates that mental health can often maybe be compromised by our diet. I mean, what we eat. If we eating all the time, we're eating certain things, certain things that aren't good for us. That, there's a gut-brain connection. Stuff goes into your brain, and all, and all of a sudden we're not really mentally healthy. I'm no expert, but it sounds like it's certainly reasonable because you need to feed your brain, right? We got to feed our brain. We got to feed it well so we don't get things like, well, poor mental health or compromised mental health, Alzheimer's. Oh my gosh, all these different gut-brain connections, things that can happen in our brain by what we feed. It's scary. We're almost out of time, doctor. I can't believe it. So do you have, before the music comes on, which is a 60-second warning, do you have any takeaway message for our listeners?
Well, on the subject of mental health and how our brains work, our brains need more energy than any other organ in our body. When we're not exercising, they consume about 20% of our calories, even though they're only 2% of our weight. And what vegetable oil does is it makes it very difficult for your brains to get the energy that they need. And that may sound like a crazy statement, but I back it up with science in chapter 3 and 4 of Dark Calories. If you want to know how vegetable oils have possibly changed your personality and how much better you're going to feel, you got to read those 2 chapters of my book, Dark Calories. It will change your brain and change your life.
So go look it up online. Go to drcate.com, drcate.com. Dr. Cate, thanks a million. We got to head out. Stay with me for a minute, though, Dr. Cate, so we can talk after. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week with Dr. Lou Tartaglia and Mark Victor Hansen. We'll see you then. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. We